will be driving the keyboard. It's very much a joint effort, this presentation. Okay, so I think we'll start. We've still got one or two people joining, but I think it's worth getting underway. Right. First, a couple of housekeeping points, please. If you could mute your phones during the webinar, there's an opportunity at the end where we can take questions. If you have any questions during the webinar, can you use the WebEx chat facility, please? We have one of my other colleagues, Steve Rowe, who will be trying to answer any questions that come up during the presentation, so we'll try and make it interactive that way. Okay, so first of all, just a PowerPoint slides before going into demonstration, which forms the bulk of the webinar. And the first thing is, what actually is analytics? Well, first of all, its latest version, or it includes the latest version of TM1, which is effectively TM1 version 11. It's got two new face modules. The first is Planning Analytic Workspace, which is normally abbreviated to PAW, P-A-W, using that terminology during the presentation. This is a completely new browser-based book and dashboarding front end. The other component is Planning Analytics for Excel, which is going to be a replacement for Perspectives. That's the second part of our demonstration. Max is actually much more similar to Cafe, which some of you may have come across. What I found is that Cafe isn't really being used in for existing TM1 customers. The final point about Planning Analytics is it's available both on-premises or the cloud. This can be a little bit confusing. I think the IBM marketing initially was very much based around the cloud, the SaaS, software as a service offering, but that's no longer the case. So these components fit together. Well, first of all, I'm going to cover the SaaS version, which was first software as a service version, which first became available almost 18 months ago now. In this situation, you have the TM1 server running on the IBM software cloud. That's sitting in a data center somewhere in London, Amsterdam. The SaaS version of Planning Analytics also includes on the server some Cognos Analytics, and interested in the predictive side of things, it includes Watts Analytics as well. But the main part of it is that TM1 server running in IBM Cloud Service. The development and administration facilities, and these currently use the traditional TM1 interfaces, so you can use Architect, Perspectives, and Performance Modeler, but they're connected to the software cloud using a remote desktop session. And that development and the end purposes. The interfaces with your external systems, you either have ODBC access using IBM Secure Gateway, you can move files from your local systems into IBM Software Cloud using FTP. the users with the software cloud using the interfaces. The new interface is Planning Analytics Workspace, for Excel, and the TM1 Web. And this is just the standard TM1 Web you're already using. This is the architecture for the cloud version, the SaaS, TM1 SaaS version. What changed? Well, 6 months ago, IBM released the version of Planning Analytics. This is pretty much just your existing TM1. And in this case, instead of running the TM1 server on a software cloud instance, you're just running it in your local data center or maybe a hosting environment. And there are 2 other subtle differences. So we'll have the end user interfaces of the Planning Analytics Workspace, Core, Planning Analytics for Excel, and TM1 Web from the SaaS version. Our SIM interfaces are done ODBC, as we have present, and for development and administration, rather than using a remote desktop onto the SaaS cloud, your standard network access. Very similar in both cases. The software is the same, and IBM have now moved to a cloud-first release policy. So they will be applying continual upgrades to their cloud SaaS version, but the Planning Analytics local version will be upgraded periodically, probably every 6 months or so, just as at present. Okay, well, that gives you an overview of architecture. Move on to an actual demonstration, because I'm sure that's what most of you are interested in. Hand over to my colleague Raj Karai, who will be driving. So we've just switched over to Raj's screen. So we're going to log on to the Planning Analytics Workspace. So I have a new login screen. And when you log in, you can see it's a look and feel to traditional TM1. It's based on briefing books and canvases, and we've got 3 books here, and the one we're going to look at is the Orange PLC. And looking at the Workspace interface, nice and visual, we have a couple of menu options. We've got the menu options along the top, and we've also got some menu buttons on the right-hand side, and we have more control over those, so we can differentiate, for example, between the reporting books and input sheets rather. We're going to start off by looking at some variance analysis. So we variance tab, and off here, you can see there are some differences in the way we're doing our selections. So we have here a fairly conventional profit and loss cube, and we've got our entities, the companies on the left-hand side, and we can see that that is a list rather than a drop-down list, and we have accounts on the right-hand side. So to our entity selector on the left-hand side, and we select, for example, Zudexon. Beyond Zudexon. Let's change, for example, let's have a look at the total orange. So selection, you can see the numbers change, the graphs change, our orange graph at the bottom change. So everything's fabric. On the right-hand side, at the moment, we're looking at our direct salary and related costs. We can change selection there. let's change that to total professional fees. A nice dashboard-based approach, the sort of thing you can give to non-finance users, and so on. We've also got on along the top is time selector. We're currently looking at June. Our selection from June to May, for example. What we can also do, if we want to see how we are through the months, we've got a little facility there where we can actually just run through all the months. So we just change January, and then we can just move through it. You can see it just advances through the months, and we can see how the numbers are changing as we go through the time periods. Okay, should we put that there? This is a reasonably static layout. We call dynamic layout. So what we can have a look at, and we're looking here, for example, at time periods, and it's a conventional 12-month period. If we move our time analysis tab, different way of looking at our time periods. So what we have here is the top pane is showing you a graph with our I believe that's showing our yes, profit and variance. And showing this from January 14 to August 15. Underneath, we have a different type of selector showing the periods, and we can just change that. So if we want to look at a longer, more than a 12-month time period, if you want to go back to the beginning of 2013, and some things are changing into 2017, very easy to do so. And again, fully on the left-hand side, if we have a look at our job entity, nice access to volumes of information. So looking at conventional tables and graphs, we can go different visualizations, and if we look at our cost tree map, here we're looking at quarterly costs, looking at our professional fees, and the size of the boxes shows the volume of the size of the amounts. In this case, we can see that we seem to have quite a big commitment within our professional fees to PwC, both audit and non-audit stuff. And here we can drill down, see the detail. Actually not the best one because we're actually at our lowest level in the account, but typically we'll be using this looking from our summary account down detail accounts. So let's move on and have P&L dashboard tab. So now the previous three screens we've been looking at are pure planning analytic workspace using core objects. This sheet is slightly different because this is actually TM1 web sheets that have been embedded and included in a plan analytics web-based briefing book, and we can see how our selectors work. So change from our total orange here, and we'll go to on our favorite company. Over here, how the variance column is showing some conditional variances. A standard Excel-based conditional variance is published via TM1 Web and embedded in a core briefing book. What we also do here is drill down. So at the moment, we're looking at a summary P&L within 12 months. What we can do is do a more detailed analysis of our gross profit figures. So we'll set a link. And what we're moving on to now with our sales analysis tab is the poor equivalent of the one cube view. So you can, with here, you can slice and dice, you can change the orientation, you can drill up, you can drill down. But formatting, quite as controlled as some of the other reports, but for analysis. So, for example, here we've got our percentage variances for our gross profit. What we do is select our variance percentage column, and we got that sort descending, so we can see where our large variances are. What we can also do is create calculations. Click on the variance percentage. Let's get a calculation. And we're going to do a ranking. Rank. Okay, there. Now added a ranking column. So now sort, for example, on our ranking of our sales value. Yep. Oh, probably better have sort ascending. We can see where our biggest sales values are. And you could also, for example, if you have only monthly information and you wanted to see the quarterly information or for ad hoc periods, you could use this calculation technique to create those ad hoc totals. And the thing about this is you're not having to do the calculation within Excel, you're not having to do the calculations within TM1. These are user controlled. Okay, so far we've been looking at reporting. Let's have a look at some input. We'll start with the simple input sheet, our sales input using 6. The model we have here is a sales and value and cost of goods and profitability model for products, and we have about, I think, 300 or 400 products. And the simple calculation, our sales value is our sales quantity times sales price. So a fairly straightforward, typical budgeting scenario. At the moment, we're looking at our summary products. We can drill down on our products. So if we drill down on our printers, Canon printers in more detail. Now, at the lowest level of the hierarchy, and if we look at our Canon BJ-S 1600, I might not be able to see it as clearly on your web, but we now have some default color formatting. So the lowest level is standard gray, the dated level, so our Canon printers and our printers are in bold. And you see that the sales value is highlighted in green. The reason for that is because it's an N-level calculation. And these are default formats applied by POR. We can now use this as a standard TM input sheet. So at the moment we have 371 in January. We expect to sell. We can change that. We might change that to a largish number so we can see the effect. If we change that to say 600. As you would expect in TM1, all of the dependent numbers change. We can do some shortcuts, so our sales price, I think we're going to have a special promotion on these printers. We're going to spread, change all of the months to £55, sales price of £55. Oh, £5. We're going to change our sales price to £45. We're going to use one of the standard shortcuts. All the numbers changing. We can also do top-down dating. So if we go to our printers and have 1,353 sales in January, we could change that to say 2,000 and spread down. one thing at the moment is if we right-click, for example, on our printers, sales quantity printers, we haven't yet got, we can hold input. We can't at the moment do more sophisticated data spreading. There's a point to make here, that is coming in the next version. They're evolving very, very rapidly. As we'll see in a couple of places, they haven't yet got all of the functionality of current TM1, but it is coming in and we expect this very soon. Simple, powerful input mechanism. What we can't get is the final level of control over the layout and formatting. This is very much a grid-based approach. If we want the controlled environment, we can approach now at our web sheet, and here we're looking at a TM1 web sheet. We've been included in a Workspace briefing book. Can we do our entity from Zudexon to, I think we were looking at Job Ice before. Go back to Job. And with our printers, so we're looking at the same sort of level. Can we expand our Canon printers? We look at the figures for January for printers. We can see just up. We can see that it's 2,000, and that's 2,000 sales units we put in the poor grid. Now we're in a web sheet. You can see much more control over the formatting. We've got this is an active form. It's on an active form. We have the level-based formatting. We've added in some total for half years. Web sheet, we have the full range of data entities. So if we right-click on the printer sales quantity for January, that's 2,000. You see all of the top-down and bottom-up data spreading routines. Okay, so two different ways of doing our input. A new one based purely on planning and pick Workspace, a more traditional way, creating a sheet and embedding it in a briefing book. So, having seen an existing briefing book, let's how we would create our own. So, I'm going to go back to our welcome page to start off by creating a new briefing book. What we're going to do here is work on the product sales cube we were just looking at, and we're going to try and set up a summary P&L, a summary analysis by different products. So on the left-hand side, we're going to start by adding a new sheet, and there are templates you can use. We're just going to use a free-form one. And on the side, you can see the different servers available to us, just the way you'll see your list of Tier 1 servers. We're going to go and have our cubes, and we're going to the revenue by product cube. We have an view up, which is a product summary. Across onto our canvas. See, it's just picked up the default. So we're going to now just orientate this the way we'd like it. So I want a monthly P&L. So I'm going to move our version by page. I'm going to have our months going. In fact, our months are going across. But we need to expand that. So let's just click on that to expand. I will have my years at the end. So if if I go to month dimension, we have a site already set up, so we'll just use our month plus year. I want to expand our total product. And what I like to do here is have the totals at the bottom because I'm a boring accountant and I like totals at the bottom. So we go to edit the set. Now, this is something which is new and is of a naming change. Instead of calling subsets, they're now sets. And having the subset edit, we now have the set selector. And it's a two-pane approach rather than the conventional tier one-pane approach. So on the left-hand side, we have all of the dimensions, what we can select from, and on the right-hand side, it shows what's selected. We'll be going to this a little bit later. At the moment, we're just going to use this to the bottom. So we just click on the 6 line, put totals at the bottom. So we apply that and close. So we have our totals at the bottom. We have our basic layout correct. We're going to do a little bit of presentation. So, publish this, users will be able to select all of dimension elements. We're going to change this slightly, and we're going to move some of our selectors outside the grid. So we're just going to resize our table, and we're going to move our version out of grid. Oh, and our product line as well. Now, at the moment, we've got these selectors outside, so if we change our version, click on the selector there. At the moment, it's on actual. If we change that to budget, at the moment, you can see nothing has actually changed. This is because the selectors outside are standalone. What we need to do is synchronize our table with the selectors. Go into the op menu. We click synchronize button, say synchronize dimensions. This is now going to synchronize dimensions on the page, and you can see that the numbers in the table have changed to reflect the budget. Since it selects outside, we can actually clown the selectors within the table, and we'll see why we're doing this a bit later, so we have a cleaner look and feel. And remember, we have not yet, we have for entity, and the reason for this is we'd like to have a nice drop-down box. So we're now going to add our entity selector. Going to open our server again. We have our entity dimension. We have existing set, entity section, and we're just going to drag that across beside the entity selection box. I think we can just add a title for the entity selection box. Okay. Let's do a title for the table. Just add a title box. And okay. So, there's the table. What I'm going to do is add a graph. This is on the existing table, so we'll just copy this existing table. Duplicate. So enables. The canvas-based approach, you do need to make sure that everything fits in correctly, but it's all just very easy. Drag and drop, no sophisticated code. Now I have that table, and the top table we're going to change from a table to a line graph. For the moment, I think our orientation is wrong there. We've got our products going across the bottom and our months, different months. Let's just change that. So we have them going across. Now, smooth line graph. Couple of points to note there. You would see at the bottom we have the child products, the total, but we're only showing the 3 child products. The reason for that is because Workspace got some intelligence and says, well, if you're in graphs, you don't want to show the children and the summary one as well, because you're misleading and misleading figure. Similarly, it's showing only the individual months rather than the total for the full year. And drill down on this. So at the moment we're looking at our printers. We can right click on printers. And drill. So we're seeing type of printers, and we can drill down further in our HP printers. Drill down. And let down on our color laser jet. And down to our lowest level. At this stage, we've got rather a lot of different individual printers. It's a little bit difficult to see them. So you might at this stage want to change to a different visualization. So in looking at line, let's just have a look at, say, a packed bubble. This is rather easier to see the relative sizes of the line. We can see that clearly our best-selling printer is the LaserJet 5500, and we see that the months for sales are April, January, March, and August. And you can look at the different visualizations that are available. We'll not go through all of them, we don't have time, but you can see we have the standard bars, columns, lines. One interesting one there towards the bottom is the word cloud. So if you have text-based information, it will give you the size of the attribute, give you the size of the display will reflect reflect how frequently that word appears. That's creating. If we could just save that, please. So we've gone through a briefing book. We've now created a new sheet and a new briefing book. Now move over to Packs, which is the new Excel interface. So we're going to leave the Workspace and go into Excel. Maximize. And having the TM1 tab, we have an IBM Planning Analytics tab. Connect to the same server we're working on. Just PTO. Have to again, as you would expect. And now in, on the right-hand side, it's bringing up all of the cubes within a server. You can have multiple servers open at the same time, which can be nice. I'm going to look at the profit and loss cube, and we have a listing view, and going to look at our profit and loss summary. And if we click on that, there are various options. An opening viewer is just opening in the core viewer, very similar to the current Explorer. We're going to start with the exploration view, and we're going to put an exploration on this sheet. Now, some of you have been using TM1 for a long time, and I think we have one or two of them on the call, with the in-spreadsheet browser. This is conceptually similar to the in-spreadsheet browser because you can drag and drop, you can slice and dice, you can do that rotation of the cube much better than you do within current perspectives. We're going to turn this into a standard system. We're going to have our months going across, and we're going to our count down, so we can just rotate our cube. So we do count it down. We just move our year. All right, I've got a little hiccup here. We're just going, not quite sure what's happening here. I think we'll just probably best go back in again. Might time out you. Okay, so we have profit cube, open our profit and loss 3. We're going to do an exploration. Okay, our year across. There, that's better. We need to have our months across. Months, we want our full year total at the end. We can right click. One of the things here, rather than going into the full subset editor, we can just do a quick reorder. Or we can just drag down to the bottom. Those at the end. And let's just expand our net profit. Our profit. So we just go down to a gross margin P&L and our gross profit. And as ever, being a boring accountant, I just have our totals at the bottom. So we go into the edit set. And interesting because, as you can see, it's the same set editor we saw in Core. And you would also have the same set editor in TM Web. So we've got a nice consistent look and feel. There's our totals at the bottom. Okay. Apply. So this is doing nice slice and dice analysis within Excel. What this is not designed to do is create your standard report types, view. So what we'll do now is create a quick report. We just convert this existing one. We've got the orientation right. We're going to create this to a quick report. Some things to note here. If we look at the numbers, the cell with the numbers in, there's no RW. It's the same with the exploration view as well. So this much faster and more efficient than standard perspectives-based calculations. Much lighter. Doesn't take requires resource on the client. This quick report, we actually don't have any selectors. The default is nothing is selected. So that's just a label. So if we right-click though, we can actually add selections. So we want people to be able to select on the entity. So see, we have an Excel drop-down, nice field for Excel users, and so just set up the selectors for the year and the version. How this two-pane approach works, we currently have 2013 selected. We can just select and add them to the current selection. There we go. And with the version, we'll there we go. Oh, and the variance as well. So we've got much more control over what people can select. We can now do some formatting. You need to be a bit careful about the formatting because Express PAX is actually controlling some of this formatting. If we just highlight the format area, in the blue box, you need to be a bit careful about what you can do. But we can insert rows and we can do some without a problem. If you want to include Excel formulae, pure Excel formulae, you'd have to do them outside the blue box, but that's just something to be aware of. But we can do standard stuff. So, for example, we can insert a row on profit. We put some top and bottoms on the gross, and maybe we put it on our own, and let's colour that, yeah, and we'll do it with our net profit. Okay. And a nice thing as well, we can also add extra rows. So we know we've got a head count. Type in head count there. It will actually add that to and expand the. Again, if we now highlight if we highlight the box, highlight the object, you can just expand it to take into account the head count. Right, let's just hide a couple of the rows we don't need. So row 6, yes, 1, 3, 6. We're not allowed people to select on, so we might as well just hide them. We'll save this away. We'll just initially just as a standard Excel workbook. And save this as a workbook. We're also going to publish it on the server. We publish once up, put in our webinar, and we'll call this email. Oh, okay. Doesn't matter. And as we would expect, this would now be available via TM1 Web because it saves on the server. But we'll also be able to access it via briefing book in the Workspace. Okay, so let's have a look at the other reporting options. So this quick report, 2 other report types. If we have a look at let's have a look at our revenue by product queue, I think. Our revenue by product cube. And look there, and we'll look at our monthly product sales. And so we've looked at an exploration. We've converted it to a quick report. Look at a dynamic report. We'll open a new dynamic report. For existing TM1 users, this is going to look a bit more familiar. If you have a look at, for example, say 21, look at one of the cells, you can see we have a conventional DBRW. Similarly, if we look in column C, sectors have a conventional subnum. This, though, is that by default, that subnum produces a drop-down, an Excel type drop-down, If you click on it, you'll get a editor. Okay. We can down on this. To the lowest level. And this is just the latest version of an active form. You can see that the spread starting on row 13. Hide 12. And we column A is, you can see it's just a standard active form. We have the different levels, have the formatting by level. The only difference with the current, the version 10.2.2 active forms, is we don't have default formatting. Not sure, we think that might be something that will be appearing in the next release. But this works exactly the same as the current active form. Final version, report type we're going to look at, and we'll name cube, is a custom report. And this on your sheet. This is actually, all this is just a standard, this is classic slice. We've got DWs in the main grid. We have our subnums, complete with a drop down. And the beauty of this and the dynamic slice is you can just reuse your existing TM1 perspectives reports. This uses DBRWs. There is almost 98% ability with existing TM1 formula. I think there are one or two TM1 formulae that don't work within packs. And a couple of other points you need to take into account. Action buttons, the packs action buttons are different to the perspectives action buttons. There is a conversion utility you can use to convert them. If you're using VBA to call the TM1 APIs, those need to be converted. But all standard TM1 perspectives reports will translate and migrate smoothly and seamlessly without any conversion required into packs. So, quick overview of packs. We've come full circle here. We've covered Paul, covered packs. Let's now bring everything together and go and sort of square the circle by going back to the Planning Analytic Workspace. The new briefing book which has been created, and add a new sheet, existing one where we're looking at our products. Let's now create a new sheet within that briefing book. I'm going to put in here the report the packs report we just created. So if we look at our our monthly P&L, I think, wasn't it? We created our report on. On the application file, there we go. The My Report, and we just drag that across. There we go. I think we just resize that because we've got quite a lot of white space. Yeah, that's fine. So here is a standard report designed in Excel, complete with the formatting. We can add graphs. We can add all of the conditional formatting, all of the things you normally do with your current perspectives reports, but it's presented within a fully browser-based book, combining both pure Planning Analytic Workspace objects with the more conventional Excel type approach. Okay, I think that's pretty much covered we want to cover in this high-level overview. We are planning to run some more detailed webinars particularly on Planning Analytics Workspace, but all packs where we can, in more detail, all the options, because there is a lot there. I'll probably cover some of the new features in the latest version of itself. The hierarchies feature, which is a very powerful way of analyzing data with hierarchies based on attributes. So it's a way of, for example, if you have 5 product types, you can analyze them instead of having to set up multiple dimensions, hierarchies of the dimension or multiple cubes. You can set up attribute-based hierarchies, allowing you to report by product type, product color, product visibility, and so forth. That we're going to cover. A few words before we just open it up to any questions and answers. Just a couple of words about updating. This is something we frequently get asked. If covered by a current support maintenance agreement, upgrade to Planning Analytics Total Planning Analytics Local free of charge. However, you are not licensed to use the Workspace module itself. You can use Planning Analytics Express, you can use a hierarchy functionality, you can use TM1 Web without extra cost, but for the Workspace facility, the briefing books, there's an additional charge, though IBM has got some special offers on, I expect until the end of the quarter. So if that's something you're interested in, it's well worth considering buying the Workspace add-on, which is minimal cost before the quarter. From a structure point of view, you would need to add an additional server because the Planning Workspace itself requires an additional server. But if it's interested, we're very happy to provide further details. I will be sending out to all of the attendees after the webinar, I'll be sending out our FAQ document, which covers a lot of these standard questions. Okay, so we're now going to open it up to any questions. We're just going to take everyone off mute, so please go ahead if you have any questions about what you've seen or how you can use this.
Hi, it's Diane Hayes here from Hermes.
Hi.
We're particularly interested in something that would provide a budget solution.
Yes.
So we would appreciate a demo specific around that.
Very happy to do that. We have a separate demonstration which concentrates much more on the budgeting facilities. The input sheets we showed you where we're doing the product level budgeting just gives you a little bit of a superficial approach to that. But from the pure budgeting and forecasting, which is more traditional TM1 functionality, we can arrange a separate presentation on that, and I suggest that you contact Ken. Ken will contact you to arrange that. We've concentrated more on the presentation side of things in this webinar because these are the new facilities. The Workspace is very new, and it's an additional, very rich graphical data discovery type approach.
Thank you.
Okay, I think if no one has any other questions, Vance, in that case, I'd like to thank everyone for attending. If you do have any queries, contact either myself or Ken Leadham, and we will be sending out an FAQ document. Thank you for your time. I hope it's been very useful.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you.